Some musicians blow up their instruments, others bite the heads off bats. From Taylor Swift to Jimi Hendrix, these are hands down some of the most insane live moments in music history. Even casual fans of rock and roll are familiar with the story of Ozzy Osbourne and the Bat. Osbourne had already established his reputation for shocking theatrics by 1982 when the Bat thing happened. Rumour had it that he'd chomped the head off a live dove to terrify record executives, and his shows included staged executions. Shock was the name of his game, and fans began getting in on the act by throwing meat and toy animals on stage for Osbourne to savage. In that spirit, a 17-year-old named Mark Neal was convinced by his friends to bring a dead bat to Osbourne's January 20th show at the Veterans Memorial Auditorium in Des Moines, Iowa. He'd found and preserved it weeks earlier, but by the time he smuggled it into the arena, it was starting to rot. When Neal threw it on the stage, Osbourne scooped it up and took a bite.
Somebody threw a bat on stage, and I thought it was one of these toy bats. So I picked it up, bite the thing's head off, and suddenly everybody's freaking out because it's a real bat.
It was dead, but as Ozzy remembers it, he felt the head twitching. He knew instantly this was not a good scenario. As soon as the show ended, Osbourne was rushed to the hospital for the first of 3 weeks' worth of rabies shots.
The taste of bats is very salty. Taste of salt.
In June 1967, on the third and final day of the Monterey International Pop Festival, Jimi Hendrix straddled his guitar, set it on fire, and smashed it to pieces after it burned. The stunt was, in part, the latest volley in the feud between Jimi Hendrix and The Who's Pete Townsend, who had a similarly destructive stage act. They'd zeroed in on Monterey as a chance to make it big on the American music scene, and neither wanted to follow the other on stage. When The Who went first and fired off explosives, it left Hendrix thinking he'd come off anticlimactic. The flaming guitar was a sudden inspiration, one Hendrix later framed as a sacrifice, saying, "You sacrifice things you love. I love my guitar." The stunt worked. Hendrix's career blew up, and his flaming inspiration helped cement the electric guitar as the instrument of a generation. The pyrotechnic competition between Jimi Hendrix and The Who inspired an iconic moment for Hendrix, but it came back to bite The Who a few months after Monterey Pop. It was September 1967, and The Who were set to appear on the Smothers Brothers Comedy Hour. By the heavily curated Leave It to Beaver standards of 60s American TV, the CBS show was edgy, and The Who's lyrics and literally explosive performances seemed a good fit.
They're gonna sing My Generation. This song really goes, and you're gonna be surprised what happens because this is excitement, and hit it.
A key part of The Who's live performances came from Keith Moon's drum kit. When Pete Townsend smashed his guitar, that was Moon's cue to set off an explosive hidden in one of his bass drums. But for the Smothers Brothers show, Moon decided to step up his game. He allegedly bribed a stagehand to load up his drum with far more gunpowder than was legal to use on a stage. So when the guitar came down and Moon set off his charge, the resulting explosion disrupted the CBS broadcast, scattered the band, and sent a cymbal into Moon's arm so fast that it sliced it open.
When it went off, it really was like a bomb going off.
Townsend has claimed the blast set his hair on fire and permanently damaged his hearing.
Pete's hair literally goes straight up and it stays up because it's fried.
As for the Smothers Brothers, they kept it together, and once the smoke cleared, Townsend played it off by taking one of the host's prop guitars and smashing it.
We thought it was wonderful.
The Red Hot Chili Peppers were still finding their identity in the early 1980s, cycling through a variety of band names and searching for their sound. But once they settled those details, they still needed to break into the pop consciousness.
This is Anthony. He thinks he's a living sex god, and I do too.
Enter lead vocalist Anthony Kiedis and his girl troubles. Kiedis told GQ that a woman with an obsessive crush on him kept sending gifts to his address. In response, he once greeted her at the door wearing nothing but a sock and not on his feet. Kiedis brought the idea to the band for a July 1983 performance at a strip club where all four Chili Peppers appeared in nothing but socks around their privates. The look not only helped the Chili Peppers gain notoriety, it also became a group signature of sorts. They chose the look for the cover of a 1988 EP, and it was such a pop culture moment that even The Simpsons seized upon it. It's still part of the band's image, but once the guys all reached their 40s, they decided it was time to retire the socks. Taylor Swift's Eras Tour was the biggest thing in pop music throughout 2023 and 2024. Fans flocked to see her concerts and watched the movie version streamed on Disney+, while the tour itself, its viral moments, and the mechanics behind them became popular points of discussion across fan sites and social media. Among the choicest viral moments was a particular stunt Swift performed on the tour. She dove into a trapdoor on the stage at one end and emerged on the other side. A projection of her swimming between the 2 points then played on the platform. It's a cool effect, but it was pretty simple to pull off, according to the behind-the-scenes tour footage used in her music video for I Can Do It With a Broken Heart. Basically, she had an airbag waiting for her below the trapdoor, and there was a track running under the stage that she rode from one end to the other. To call Rage Against the Machine's 1993 Lollapa-nude-za appearance a performance is a stretch, because they didn't actually play that day. They did take the stage, however, naked.
Well, I wasn't there, but I sure saw the pictures. That was before manscaping.
The gesture was a protest against Tipper Gore's Parents Music Resource Centre, or PMRC, a cultural watchdog group who spearheaded the placing of parental advisory warning labels on record albums they considered dangerous. Rage Against the Machine strongly opposed the labelling, considering it censorship. With Bill Clinton in the White House and Tipper Gore newly installed as Second Lady, the band considered Lollapalooza the perfect opportunity to protest.
It's our responsibility to organize and to stay on top and keep pressuring and keep confronting.
Each musician's naked body was marked by a letter that together formed PMRC. Their instruments sat unplayed, leaning against the stage amps. The protest went on for 15 minutes. Despite the hostile reaction of some members of the crowd, there is a little bit more to the story, however. Touring can take a toll on vocalists, and by the time Rage reached Lollapalooza, lead singer Zach De La Rocha's voice was shredded. Even if the band had wanted to perform a normal set, it may not have been possible. There have been many fine rock bands over the years, but the Rolling Stones still stand apart for how completely they embody a generational fascination with sex, drugs, and rock and roll. Many of their songs have endured. Mick Jagger and Keith Richards have made it through several rough patches, and the band members have quite literally outlived many of their peers. Age and death have slowed them down, but the Stones keep on rolling. In earlier years, the Stones were famous for their energy and showmanship, including the use of hydraulics and pyrotechnics on stage. The band also made use of a certain prop, one not quite as iconic as their tongue logo, but memorable in its own way. It was a giant inflatable tube, painted on one side to look like a finger, but undeniably phallic. They didn't deny it either. The connotations were latched onto by the press, fans, and the Stones themselves. In East Germany, the prop went limp, which may have motivated the Stones' nickname for it, Tired Grandfather. Halloween is the ideal occasion to break out strange, eye-catching performances, and Phish makes a habit of it. Starting in 1994, when the band performed covers of every last song from the Beatles' White Album, the group offers up something unique every October 31st. Except, of course, for those long stretches when the band is on hiatus or broken up. They often dressed up and covered other artists for Halloween, but things got a little more elaborate in 2018. That year, for its second set, Phish became Kasvot Vakst, a Scandinavian progressive rock band who had a single album, I Rock. Phish then played the whole thing. The programmes issued to concert-goers that night included in-depth analysis of Kasvot Vakst, and members of Phish were quoted as being long-time admirers who wanted to pay tribute to the group. But Kasvot Vakst and I Rock don't exist. The whole thing was an elaborate Halloween gag. The songs Phish sang that night were its own, done in the style of 1980s prog rock. Fans took the stunt in good humour, even getting in on the fun afterward through fake interviews and fan accounts, and Phish ended up staging a similar Halloween show 3 years later. For 2021, Phish invented Sci-Fi Soldier, a band from the year 4680, and played yet another complete and completely fictitious album. The KLF has had an interesting history. Formed in 1987 by Bill Drummond and Jimmy Corti, the avant-garde group has changed its name a few times. Before KLF it was The Jams and then The Time Lords. With the name changes came shifts in sound. The move to the KLF saw Drummond and Corti switch from pop and hip-hop to acid. Consistently part of the group's image was Drummond's wild behaviour, whether that be using unlicensed music from other artists or chucking his own records into the ocean. Still, the KLF's nomination for Best British Band at the British Record Industry Trust Show, or BRITS, in 1992 was a major breakthrough for the group, and they were asked to perform at the awards ceremony. Drummond seemed to go out of his way to provoke his audience that night. He brought in metal band Extreme Noise Terror to collaborate on the show, a group with a very different sensibility than what usually featured at the Brits. Early ideas for a stunt included Drummond cutting off his own hand or slaughtering sheep on stage, an idea his partners nixed. Instead, he smuggled in a machine gun and fired blanks into the unsuspecting audience. The KLF ended up winning in a tie with Simply Red, but the ceremony doubled as an ostentatious way to announce they were leaving the music business altogether.
Signing off with a stunt in which they set fire to £1 million, they deleted their back catalogue, but promised to return after 23 years.
23 years later, in 2017, they reappeared as the justified agents of Moo Moo, published a novel, and began to upload their previously deleted music onto streaming services. In the wake of Donald Trump's unexpected victory in the 2016 presidential election, plenty of American artists voiced their displeasure with the new commander-in-chief, but rapper YG took things a little bit further than most. YG and the late Nipsey Hussle collaborated on a protest song that called out the racism and xenophobia fueled by Trump's rhetoric. The song is titled Donald Trump, or FDT for the censors, which leaves no room for ambiguity. Although their producer didn't expect FDT to be popular, the song was a hit. For a live performance of FDT in Los Angeles on November 10th, 2019, YG worked in an extra dig at Trump. He brought adult film star Stormy Daniels on stage, and she joined YG for the opening lines of the song.